and his challenger Fabiano Caruana. I'm Anna Rudolph. I'm going to be your host and our chess expert. As usual, is the strongest female player that ever lived on this planet, Judith Polgar.
Thank you. Hi, nice to be.
Judith, I see that you have visited some of the museums here in London. Was that the British Museum?
Yeah, that was the British Museum passing by, yeah.
I think they also have some ancient chess sets, if I'm correct.
Well, chess is everywhere. Chess is in all cultural places, I think, not only in sport, but in art it's a very big part. You can almost everywhere find some very ancient, in big museums, some ancient chess-related items.
And chess is certainly everywhere here at the college. We are in downtown London. The match is heating up. Magnus Carlsen posted a picture of himself. He took a selfie on his free day, and he somehow managed to get injured. He's got a black eye. We will see soon. The world champion. Apparently he played football and he managed to clash with one of the NRK reporters, therefore the black eye. But I thought that the selfie was really funny and simply the caption with it. The match is indeed heating up. 8 draws we have seen so far. The deadlock hasn't been broken for 8 days.
Absolutely. I mean, well, it did not happen in Carlsen's history in playing full championship matches. That's clear. And, well, it is very special. I think the players are not only psychologically getting tired, but also maybe physically. I mean, they are working on this and preparing for this match for months to go back, right? And when they started this match, they were full of energy, full of expectations, etc. And then it started with a very interesting game 1. And then from day after day, game after game, it was like both of them felt that there will be some expected fight in a way that there will be a decisive result. And we had some few games, game 1 and game 6, and possibly, of course, there was a very crucial game yesterday, game 8. I believe that it must have been hurt quite a bit, Fabiano, that he could not convert his advantage. And not only advantage on the board, but also on the clock. And also game 8, which is already going very much towards to the end. So yesterday, missing out this opportunity, it was extremely painful.
Yes, I agree with you. In terms of chances, of course, game 1 was the biggest missed chance by Magnus Carlsen, but that was the first game, and it seemed like neither Fabiano nor Magnus were ready for the match yet. They were just getting used to the venue, getting used to the match. And yes, it was a huge advantage for Magnus. He had a winning position, and it wasn't just winning in one move. His position was winning for a couple of moves, different ways of converting it to a full point. He didn't manage to win that game. He also had huge time advantage in that particular first game. But then, yes, they started making more draws. I mean, the game 1 was also a draw, but from a winning position for Magnus. And game 6, as you said, was the famous mate in 36 for Fabiano, and game 8 was just simply an advantageous position for the challenger.
Yeah, but I must say that game 8, which we are talking about now, it was a special advantage. You know, it was an advantage where absolutely it's a position which Magnus hated to play. I'm pretty sure about that. I'm pretty sure that this is the kind of position that most likely will not appear on the chessboard, that White has, or the challenger has such a huge initiative, which really means a lot on high-level chess. And I felt yesterday that if Fabi cannot convert this game, then he's in trouble a little bit. I must say that I thought that with really, he had nearly 1 hour time advantage on the clock. He had clear advantage on the board. He had the initiative. He had to continue the attack and be extremely precise, which he was not able to do. And I saw also that Magnus was very much relieved. I mean, he could
play Queen E8.
But also at the press conference, you could see a face of Magnus as if he would win a game, probably.
True.
I mean, it was an essential game, this game 8, and I'm very curious how Fabiano can play today. Because also game 8 was very special from point of view that it was the first game where we can say that white really had an advantage, significant advantage, and black was during the whole game playing for a draw, or more saying, fighting for his life at some point. And this is special because especially now that Magnus is going to have 2 more white games. Well, last game is always another story, right? That's a different. I always say that there is game 1 when it is kind of special. You have all the games in between, and then you have the last game. That's also you have a completely different mind of set of mind, and it has a completely different atmosphere already in the playing hall, that you have to win, draw is enough. I mean, it's always something special around the last game, especially not talking about that it's a World Championship match. So it's a big question whether we have a turning point with the last game, that white is taking over, and white is the old white, what we expect from the white pieces, that who is playing with the white pieces can take the initiative and take the lead. And I think this is a big question today also, that how Magnus will be controlling the white pieces. Which move is he going to be starting, for example?
I was going to ask you just that. We have seen Magnus Carlsen switching between his openings every single time he had the white pieces. It was d4 first, then c4, then e4, then back to d4.
So by the logic, it should be c4, right? Again.
C4. Wouldn't that be too predictable?
No, I would think, well, everything should be ready for Fabiano in his mind to be ready to play, but I think he's not going to play the English. He's going to play d4 or e4, but I think d4, e4, but I would bet more on d4.
I also have a feeling that it's more likely to be d4. His way of trying to get an advantage in the Petrov didn't seem very promising. He went for a sideline, which could have been, it could have led to something if Fabiano wasn't ready for it. But Fabiano came very well prepared. Well, against this knight d3 sub-variation, he went for knight c6.
But it seems that Fabiano is very well prepared in everything. But especially, I think, in the Petrov, I would see very little chance for Magnus of today to get anything special.
And that's why I don't believe that e4 will be his first choice. Of course, we can't read his mind. Who knows? Maybe they found something in the Petrov during this football match where he got a black eye. We can never know.
Well, he was definitely shaken up, probably, with the ball.
It's always, of course, good to see the sense of humor with which Magnus approaches the press conferences, and also his social media posts often are hilarious. And he's the first to make a joke about his black eye.
Yeah, he didn't try to detail the story about it, but yeah, when I saw, I was not really understanding what's really going on. And
we're just looking at his picture on my screen. It's a great selfie. I would call it a bathroom selfie. It's in that category.
So it is very interesting how one or the other player will be able to unbalance the other one. I was also wondering whether what are the possibilities, the possible chances that any of the player has to create in order to be able to win the game. Because we could see in this match that small advantages or more pleasant positions are not really enough to have a full point. Because whenever it gets to that point that it's really tough and the knife is on your neck, the players are really somehow focused much more, and they know that, well, maybe I'm not winning this game, but definitely I cannot lose it. And so this is very interesting. For example, I was thinking about it. Maybe if we are having the queens off, there is a very slim chance that we have a decisive game.
Oh, it's going to be about the queens.
I think somehow the queens must stay on the board to get more dynamic and more opportunities for any of the player to. Not that he's going wrong necessarily, but more that he might be taking a riskier decision, and now that the players are starting to get tired in every way, maybe they loosen up, and maybe once they make a decision that it's not always on the extremely safe road and on the safe side, but maybe they also think that, well, it's only 4 games to go, right? So it would be nice to talk.
Only 4 games to go. If it's a draw, if it's a tie after 12 games, then we're gonna see playoffs. And Magnus Carlsen should feel confident about his chances in Rapid and Blitz.
Absolutely, as Magnus' scores are much better in shortening time controls. You can see he's also world champion, I think, twice.
Yes, and 1 year he held all 3 titles together, the
that
classical,
was amazing.
The Rapid and the Blitz world title.
That was amazing, and everybody knows that how great he is in Rapid, Blitz, and I heard also he's playing some Blitz games, I think, online.
Oh, he's amazing in Bullet.
And so I'm pretty sure that he will kind of be happy if it's going to move on, and that's how it has to happen, if it's 6-6. But I doubted that he has this in his mind, that he doesn't want to win a game. Because I think for him also, the real World Championship title he would be keeping against Fabiano Caruana in a classical game. If it's going to be in a playoff, it will be not so tasty.
I have the same feeling that Magnus wants to prove in classical format that he is the best. There's only 3 rating points dividing these 2 players, world number 1 and world number 2. So Magnus definitely wants to show it on the board, and not just in Rapid or Blitz, that he is the number 1 and he has to stay on the throne. Before we continue with today's game and the discussion whether Magnus or Fabi has better chances, let's see the opinion of our visitors from the previous game.
I've enjoyed it very much. It was a very dramatic game.
We have this tradition, we follow Magnus. It's huge to follow Magnus, and it's fantastic to be here.
I came all the way from the Netherlands to watch the game, and I was afraid like it could be a boring game, but it was quite exciting.
Yeah, it was a good game. I loved the opening in particular, very pressing. It's sad that it wasn't a decisive result. I thought with a sacrifice pawn that surely something would happen, but it was still very good. So.
I really thought that Fabiano was going to bring the queen to h5. I can't remember which move it was, but I thought he was going to play a little more aggressively. And then when he didn't do that, and then the queens came off the board, I really think that it was headed towards a draw.
Caruana started very well, and he seemed to have everything prepared, and then he started thinking, and his quality of play started dropping.
We are a little bit cheating because we look at this computer analyze and we could see that C5 was winning.
There's no doubt we support Magnus Carlsen.
Support Magnus. Yes, we're here for Magnus.
I had a bet on Magnus in the first game with black, and he had a clear winning position. He didn't make what he should do.
I think that Magnus now needs to play for 12 draws and win in the Rapid or the Blitz.
Oh, no!
So he's costing you money?
Yeah, the first one cost me money, but that was like, okay, if he's winning and I make some money out of it, it's lovely. If not, who cares?
I think Magnus should play for winning next game.
I think it's going to go to the tie breaks, and Magnus, I believe, is a stronger Rapid and Blitz player, so he would win, but...
I don't think it's going to go to tie breaks. And I feel that the momentum in the match has really swung towards Fabi.
I was impressed by both of them.
And I was here in the candidate games in 2013 when he qualified to play for the World Championship.
Oh, it's a tough one. I'm an American, so I think chess would explode in America if Fabi wins, so I'd love that. I've also been going for Magnus for about 7-8 years, so it's hard to root against him. So I'm happy any way it goes.
Huge fan of Magnus. I've been following him for a few years, and I watched his documentary that they made a couple years ago about him, and just got really into it.
For all of us chess players who played chess before Magnus Carlsen, it's just amazing that a Norwegian is that good at chess. So we enjoy pretty much every game he plays, I think.
I think Magnus will come back.
Magnus!
No, not really. I like both of them. I know that they're very nice people, and I mean, if I had to choose, I would choose probably Magnus because my mum supports him.
I have never been worried about Caruana.
So can I ask you who you're rooting for?
Magnus Carlsen. This is his sweater. I'm a fan.
I always love listening to our visitors, and of course we have Team Fabiano, Team Magnus, but all in all, everybody just wants to see a fair and exciting match.
Yeah, it's very nice to see the excitement of the people who are locally here at the venue, but it caught my ear, the gentleman who was saying that it's going to be 6-6 and Magnus will be winning on a playoff. It was not very popular around him.
No,
right?
not at all. Immediately booed. We have visitors from all over the world. It is great to see that London, since it's such a metropolitan city, it managed to bring together chess fans from 5 different continents every day. It's full house at the college. And also, of course, a big shout out to our online audience.
It was also nice to see a gentleman traveling from Amsterdam to Holland to
and from
fly
the States,
in. And
from
actually,
Australia.
I just met while I was at the British Museum. A young gentleman coming up to me and said, "Well, I just arrived from France for today's game." So
he recognized you at the British Museum.
Yeah, it was kind of funny, and it is really great to see that. And this is the great advantage of having it in such a great city and capital like London. That, of course, many people are very happy to fly in, not only for the match, but that's the best excuse to come over. And also we have to mention, I think, that in the press room we are, what I've heard, there are nearly 15 countries who has representatives, correspondent, who really write about daily basis from different continents about the match. And this, I think, it's exceptional to see the press room, like 40, 50 people every day sitting there and waiting the excitement. And of course, everybody is like really stressed already there too, I guess, to really see a decisive game. And really, the whole world is following this match because, I mean, in principle, it's a very interesting timing for this match. The players are from the same generation. They are really head-to-head on the world ranking and also here in this match. So it's nice to see a match which has such an excitement from outside.
I think soon we will go to the playing venue and see the players. Of course, they need to go through a security check every single day, which is even more strict than an airport check. So you can imagine how everyone makes sure that the players don't need to worry about cheating at all. Of course, both are gentlemen, fair play is obvious. But just in case, so that there's not even a slight chance, even from chess fans who like to create rumors, the venue is scanned every single day. The players are scanned. They can have no electronic device on them. And Fabiano is the first to arrive in the box. As you said, the world is watching.
Absolutely, the world is really watching, and we have the world champion coming in. Shake hands and ready for the start. Game 9.
After 8 draws, will it be the day today when
will
someone
Magnus will really have this spot on under his eye, or did he make some makeup on it?
I think we shall soon see on a close-up about the world champion whether he had any makeup covering his black eye, or he simply wants to show Fabiano that he's ready for the fight.
The first hit was did not have an effect in his preparation.
The first move will be played by Daniel Whale. He's an architect and designer, and you can check out one of his inventions, which is called Chess Notes. It's a chess set where, when you make moves, the pieces create a melody. Every chess game is a different melody, and you can test it out here. It was presented and launched at the World Chess Championship in London. What do you think will be the first move that Daniel plays for Magnus?
Well, what Magnus wants to play, I think, is d4.
d4.
I would bet on d4.
Let's just make a quick poll among our audience if we can be very fast. Do you think that Magnus Carlsen will play d4? Can you please raise your hands if you vote for d4? Well, it's not so popular, actually. What about e4? e4? I think a couple of more votes for e4. c4? For the English opening? Anything else?
G3, we have a suggestion.
Knight f3, he can also play. I would say maybe knight f3. Today could be knight f3. Thank you so much for participating in our poll. We will ask you from time to time to tell us your opinion. And the move for the world champion in game 9 is
is...
Oh, C4. Well done to the few from our audience who actually managed to guess it.
I'm surprised at C4, to be honest.
I was surprised about it too,
I mean,
because we were discussing the tendency. He started with D4, then C4, then E4, then D4, and now C4 again.
So the logic is, we know what's the last game, right?
E4. So easy to prepare against this guy called Magnus.
C4, E5.
Once again, the English opening is on the board, and we shall see where Magnus will deviate.
I guess again,
if
knight
he wants to deviate.
F6. Yeah. Where is he going to be deviating from the previous game? Knight F3, knight C6, I guess, will be on the board in a second.
So far, it's just the same variation as game 4 and G3. They are indeed repeating the same line of the English opening.
Of game 4. Still D5. C takes D5 will be on the board in a second.
And after knight takes D5, bishop G2 is the most natural, so we are definitely heading toward the same position. The question will be, if Fabiano, first of all, if he wants to repeat bishop C5, or will he choose a different line? And what is it that Magnus has prepared against bishop C5?
So bishop G2. So now it's a big question whether is he going to play the most played knight B6 move
or bishop
C5 again.
4.
This is a very serious question. Because bishop C5 is not popular at all. It only just came...
Not popular for others, but for Fabiano, it is the move.
Continued with bishop C5,
He went for
right?
the very same line. This is a sub-variation in the English opening, bishop C5, and Fabiano is repeating it from game 4. Castle, kingside on the board, and with castle, kingside, we are indeed in the exact same position.
Black will castle. Yeah, I'm surprised that he played this because he so much didn't get anything.
So it's
in the
logical from
previous
Fabiano's
game.
side to repeat it if he trusts his team and
He went
that
rook
there's-
E8 here, I guess.
After D3, rook E8
Yeah.
was game 4. Yes, and repeating the exact same line, this bishop C5 variation means that Fabiano really believes in this variation, how well they analyzed it, and he doesn't think there's any hole in
Now
his
we have a new
preparation.
move, I think.
Oh,
Now bishop
that's a new
G5.
move. Bishop D2 was played in game 4, and now instead Magnus Carlsen goes for bishop G5.
Actually, bishop G5, as far as I see in the database, there was only one game. It's difficult to imagine, but as bishop C5 itself is not a very popular, it is a popular move, but there is not so much theory yet on it. It is the case that he played bishop G5.
Who
But
played
I'm
this
sure
one game that you could see?
it was not so strong players. It was Čurić against Majerić. It's both of them under 2,300 players, and actually Black took on C3, and after that he played F6, which and after Bishop E3, it was not. That's how it went. Knight C3, B takes C3, and F6. But I think there is no need to take on C3 first. I would consider immediately first F6.
We will receive some help to analyze the opening of today from our special guest who made the first move for Magnus Carlsen, 1c4, Daniel, architect and designer. He has created, as we mentioned already, chess notes, a very particular chess set where once you make a move, it creates a melody, and every chess game has a different tune to it. Welcome to the studio, Daniel. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
We wanted to ask you, first of all, how did it feel to be in the box, in the sample box, and did you expect C4?
No, I was rehearsing the others. First, it's incredibly tense. You know, you feel very nervous. It's like borrowed nerves. So you don't know why. Nearly as nervous as I feel now. But it's live. It's a very, very strange experience. I had experience in doing live television, so I know what it means. Not in front of the cameras, but I was designing for television. The moment the lights went on, and it was like the stress, I never felt anything like it. So I have to imagine what it is like for two players to be live for every game. Must be absolutely a game of nerve control.
And as the table says, the world is watching. There's the graphics on the table. Tell us more about your chess background, because if you came up with chess notes, I believe you must be a chess fan yourself.
Well, I'm what they call a lapsed player. So I was an avid and devoted teenage loner that loved to play chess. I did that until I was 15. And I was born in Argentina, so I was lucky as well to see Petrosian Fischer, which was an extraordinary moment and that sort of consolidated my love for chess, or my interest in the idea of chess, more than just the dedication to the theory of chess. So I find that chess is an amazing medium. It's one of the few lingua francas that we have, millennial. So there's nothing else that can actually connect the world in the way chess does. And that's where my passion lies. That's why my involvement designing the chess pieces, designing the original candidates in 2013 here. So it goes deep because the passion is there.
That's really impressive. Can you tell us more about your design? And first of all, the chess set from 2013 and now the new innovation.
Well, in 2013, I had the opportunity to also design the Grand Prix in London, where I met the players and I introduced some models of what I thought the chess pieces should be like. So I got a lot of very good feedback. So the design really is the result of in a way, a modernization of the tradition. Because in 1846, when the pieces were created by Staunton, and most importantly by the invisible Nathaniel Cook, who was the architect and designer of the pieces, the son-in-law of the owner of the company that produced it. So it has a nepotism attached to it. But the pieces were much slender than the ones I created, because they originally would have been thought to be ivory and coral, as if there was a tradition for ivory and coral. So they were replicating materials. And what I did is make them robust and properly wooden. So I will be talking about that tomorrow. I'm doing a talk at 1 o'clock in this venue, where we'll expand in all the different pieces, the commentaries I just made, both where I come from and why chess and why chess pieces in that shape. And as for sound, is the second part of your question, has been a dream or a thought of many, many people. I'm not here trying to claim that, oh my God, it's about sound.
You should be very proud of it. We loved it. We watched the video.
It is the result, in a way, of so many people trying to open a bottle, sort of the jar. And this starts in 1963, when I think it's 63 or 68, 63, when Duchamp meets with John Cage, and they call it the reunion. And some Bell Electronics sort of engineer created a board that was prepared to make every one of the 64 squares a sound. So John Cage, being the composer, he was not very good at chess, but as we know, Marcel Duchamp had played for France in the Olympiad, so he was very good. And the foremost modern artist is the one that actually created the idea, or gave the word artist its new context through a concept, the idea of conceptual art. And they played and they made funny noises. Other people have tried to demonstrate that there is a connection between sort of chess and music, having done certain things with it. But what we thought is, if we could create a board that was responsive, like a keyboard, and every piece would have its connection. And the next thing was that nobody plays a single move. So it was not about the single move, it was about the sequence. of moves. A chess player is thinking ahead. So if it's thinking ahead, it's already having its sound. So you have white having its sound and black having its sound. They share socially the same rhythm. So they're not in syncopation. They're in the same rhythm because they should. They're socially engaged one across the other. And so there is tonal differences of the sound of the move for the whites and the black. The taking is the universal sound, because, it creates an extraordinary melody. We are as surprised as anybody to finally see it performed, because obviously we were doing this amateur version until players play it, and it really brings that extra dimension. Takes chess from being a very private, personal experience. You can see these two players in a very intimate setting, and the only thing we get is the image, and the transmission of the moment is the picture that you get as if that is the biggest we can get. The moment you outsound, you create not just drama, but you create another dimension. The place grows. The idea of chess moves away from just being small, 64 squares, 5 centimeters each. And I think that was the idea, trying to transcend, make this a transcendental game again, move that abstraction up and making it interesting.
So when people are playing, actually I was fortunate enough to see it personally the other day with you, you showed me, and it was very impressive because really you have a beautiful wooden chessboard which has all the senses on the squares, right, under the wood. And we were playing a few moves, and it was giving different sounds depending how fast we are making the moves or how slowly. Can you tell us more about that? And what would be the ideal space, time in every move that the sound really gets really exciting and the best?
We need to see it in blitz at the moment.
Well, I had a feeling that a bullet would really make you crazy.
But I think the intention is to make the experience a dramatic one, that you feel the intensity. And we had also programmed in the idea that after you spending some time thinking about the move, after a minute, the music starts to diminish to the point it disappears. And then it gets reactivated, and as if the player that has the move and makes the move is re-energized by it, and the player that is receiving the move is actually alerted by it in a way. So if you left the chair, you better be back. But so there is also, it was very important getting the emotion, because the king, for example, has a sense of, it sounds a bit like a heart. So it really is about trying to bring emotion. All of the intentions were really trying to build up a crescendo, that every game has a degree of, it matters even if you're playing it as fun, because that's the big idea. People like me, not in any ELO or in a hurry to get to any ELO ranking, can actually feel the intensity and the pleasure of playing chess, because it adds that extra dimension. And I think it's not just by the great chess players that I hope will enjoy it and not be too disturbed by what used to be a library game, into creating something that actually encourages other people to come in, and really even the opportunity in the future, maybe somebody could even be learning moves through the sound. Is another an aide-memoire, is something else that adds to the memory, apart from just thinking mathematically or find some formula or whatever strategy you have to remember the games. So hopefully we'll bring more people into it, and particularly might make children enjoy the idea of the game through more than just, do I have to? So they might really have something that attracts them to it, and actually might make more chess players.
I think it's very interesting how some of the most famous games, if we would play it in the ideal speed, what kind of music it would give. That the evergreen game or something, or even some of the games, the 115 moves game one.
Well, we avoided doing the 115. We've done number 2 because it was easier than doing the 115, but we have just completed the up to game 5, so that will be posted. So they will be feeling now, you will be able to feel and see the variety of sound within the same melodic experience, because until we change the melody and other musicians can take on the role, this is the sound it has. So it's quite modern, and as I say, it's quite intense sound effects for the experience.
Can it be also translated in a way that at home, let's say, I would be able to make the moves and get the same sound? Or do you have it already that we can test it?
Not yet, but having resolved the difficult part was actually recognizing where you don't overscore, and that's in terms of music, the idea of the game. So don't try to plan it, don't try to think. How do you create music? Having resolved that, I think is the first step. The next step is creating an app, creating the responsive environment, either in the cloud or through a physical object. That's the next step. But at the moment is the joy of being able to do something that helps chess transcend its tradition and move the tradition on, because it's not, will never end being the millennial game, and nobody can possibly change it. I resist to make pieces of chess pieces that don't look like chess pieces myself, but although I've done it in the past. And tomorrow in the lecture you'll see it. The important thing is that we want to keep on moving this passion from being an inward one to being an outward one. And that has to come from another direction. It has to come in as opposed to push out. And I think that's what I think we work in World Chess to try to do, find the people that would like to come into chess. And I think London and this tournament is doing a hell of a lot for it. It's in the news, people have the interest beyond just the aficionados and the specialized and the ones that are dedicated.
No, I think it's very important also that you experience it. You're together and you experience it and you play it. Of course, it is a completely different feeling also to try the chessboard of yours, to play on it and immediately getting the visual and the effect in sound as well. But of course, some people are not so lucky to come here and try it out. Is it possible to buy this equipment already or not yet?
No, not yet. We've seen the absolute debut of what it is, the prototype. We made it by the skin of our teeth. But that's part of the joy of the cycle. For the candidates in Berlin, we launched Paper Chess. And again, was another dimension of generating an interest outside chess. Is because as beautiful as the pieces are, I'm not talking about my design, but the notion of actually a wooden chess piece, the physicality and the materiality and the somehow pleasure one has in using them, it's a bit daunting for somebody that starts to look at things that look a bit precious, particularly a child. So the idea that we created Paper Chess to try to give, and the self-assembly, so you feel if a child learns how to make it and then learns how the moves, it will be less daunting, a prospect, and different type of children can actually engage with it. So the same as we launched Paper Chess last minute, then we have launched this last minute, but it's adding dimensions. This is probably the most important thing, to make chess a social game again. As you refer to it, it's like it is about two people, even their adversaries, they are sharing a social moment. It's an extraordinary, those that play chess, maybe by now it becomes automatic. It's like putting a shirt and going to play, to the boots and going to play football. It becomes as if we don't think about it, but the notion is that it's a great social medium. And I would like to see it back in coffee shops and anybody playing at the risk of losing, as if losing means nothing. It doesn't matter. What matters is to do it.
Well, of course, it's hard to convince about this attitude right now for the guys who are playing in the box, right?
Oh, in the box.
Yeah.
Everybody here,
No.
I'm sure, as competitive as everybody else, and they would like to win every game. I remember wanting to do that. I wanted to beat my father, who taught me how to play, obviously. This is what happens. But there is something about remembering when you learned for the first time and trying to recreate that in this 21st century when there's so many games that child would have already played, and he would have done it not in a social environment, but in a very personal environment, sort of intimate, because he's playing a Nintendo or Game Boy or whatever it is, and actually trying to understand that there is something about that social part that is important, is what we need to remember. This is probably the crucial part, making chess social.
Chess in general, I think it's extremely important for this generation to experience the feelings, the being there physically with communication, whether it's on the chessboard, off the chessboard, or apart from playing a game. And it's not about winning or losing all the time. But actually also the world champion and the top players, they are of course here for the winning, nothing else practically. But I know all of them, and including myself when I was still in competition, I loved the game itself to play, right? Just the joy of the process of fighting and challenging yourself. So I also believe that's extremely important, and of course it's lovely to see if it comes back that we have people who are playing. Of course they are unhappy, they are happy, they win, they lose, but they socialize. But for this, of course, the audience is also very important. The people who are not necessarily in competition or even playing in a cafeteria or somewhere, but enjoying watching others to be playing this game.
I think that is interesting. Is again back to the idea of how many people can socially gather around a chessboard, and that's also the limitation. And we're working on trying to think of how to transcend that as well.
Yes, we have a question. If you have a question to Mr. Rail.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Sure.
I have some experience with other professional sports, tennis being one of them. And tennis was the only game that I've ever heard referred to by world-class players as conversation, which is very much akin to what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And they have to be elemental sports. The only other one I can think of would be boxing, which is very different in a way, but maybe more akin to chess even than tennis. But from the social point of view, I think it's really important because hopefully people here will disagree with this, but it may be an antidote to the social media sort of somnolence, let's say, sleepiness. But also I was wondering whether your musical aspirations could actually be used on a tennis court or maybe a boxing.
Funny. Have you?
Sorry, just a moment. I'll need to repeat the question since we don't have a microphone in the audience. I'm sorry. I'll need to tell our online audience that it's a great question, and it's whether chess is similar to tennis or boxing. The gentleman. Sorry, I don't know your name.
My name is Simon.
Actually, Simon from our, actually, yes, Simon from our audience has a great question, and it's where he's comparing tennis and boxing and how those two sports can also be treated as a conversation. And the rest of the question, Daniel, if you can respond to.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is a precedent also for tennis with Robert Rauschenberg. He actually in the Armory in New York. He set up a tennis court, and he got one famous tennis player, and I cannot remember the two participants, but in the recent exhibition in the Tate Modern, they had an incredible video or recording of what happened. And it was an extraordinary tennis game that stand full of light, and they start playing the light, and every one of the two rackets and probably the same electronic boffins created the elements for Rauschenberg that they did for Cage, as they were related through Black Mountain. And they started playing in full light, and the racket had a sound. So every time they hit the ball, there was a bang, bang going, really big sound. And the Armory is the biggest, big arsenal building in the middle of New York. So it really resonated. The audience was mesmerized, and little by little, the lights were dimmed. And the end playing in the dark. And the only thing they could hear, because the players adjust, the audience probably cannot see anything anymore, and the only thing they could hear was the sound of the ball against the racket. So the idea, the important thing is to bring the past forward and actually start to make that conversation again. And in the age of even sort of Bluetooth headsets, you can imagine two tennis players playing, trying to get the right sound in the racket, hitting the sweet spot, because then the idea would be, I presume this is what you're referring to, is can you learn by knowing that you hit the sweet spot, and with the other dimensions. But it just shows that somehow your expectation, everybody's expectation, is that the experience in the 21st century adds more senses to everything. We layer things. We moved into a world full of imagery, and now full of sound, and is overlaid to the conventional, to the everyday that we play, the traditions, as opposed to making the traditions disappear and being reinvented by sort of virtualizing everything.
I thought that was a great question. We also need to ask you about today's game, since you're a chess fan yourself. Have you seen the position, or is it the first time
the first time I looked since I made that move.
Yes,
it was a very good move. Huh? I tell you what, I thought about it for a long time.
Yeah.
And I still don't know why I did it, but there we go.
You didn't play C4 but when you competed? I mean, when you played against your father, or when you played against your
No, it looks like I was not English then. So I sound too knowledgeable, but I'm not, okay? I'm holding on to knowledge like you all do with the fingertips, So this is how we do it. I just, let me look at it. I need to concentrate a little bit.
Yes, I think if Judith can take us through the last couple of moves after Bishop G5, that will help us understand the current situation.
It was Bishop G5 was the new move compared to game 4, where Bishop D2 was happening. It's a provocation from white side that, most likely Black will be playing F6 here or later, and actually Fabiano also took on C3. Maybe after F6, he was worried that then already Bishop D2 would lead to a different position, because in the game what he played before, Knight C3, Bishop C3, in a later stage maybe he would have some worries on this diagonal. So, but it was, of course, all preparation for both players, and the reaction was Knight C3, and after B takes C3, F6, while we were watching that game previously where White played Bishop E3, not between very strong players, now Magnus played Bishop C1, which I had a feeling that surprised a little bit Fabiano, which is not necessarily an understandable move instantly, right? That it just went out 2 moves ago to G5, and now after provoking F6 to go back to its initial square, why does F6 such a bad move for Black, right? You may ask. But I think at this stage of the match also, Magnus wants to somehow to create a little bit different position, and we see that the structure is not symmetrical at all, so it is very flexible for later part of the game. Bishop E6 is the most natural move, as you want to definitely not allow the queen to go to B3, so development is also very important. Bishop B2, very straightforward continuation from White side, because White wants to go and play in the center for now. Black played Bishop B6, just going away, so D4 is not going to be happening with the tempo, and White played D4. So this is the position we are having. For the moment, we can say that the B2 bishop is practically not standing very well, but I'm sure White has its idea that eventually one day he will open up the diagonal in some way or another of his bishop on B2, and he wants to have both of his bishop powerful in later part of the game. But for now, it's definitely not a bishop which can be very proud of its strength. And after d4, of course, white really made a weakness on the c4 square. So this game might get very tactical in a short while. Now there are a lot of questions for black, whether can black take on d4, for example. And if white would be taking with the pawn, if white would be on move and he would have time for e4, then white has a huge advantage. So the question is whether black can blockade or stop by any means, for example, to play bishop d5, and white not to be able to play e4. But possibly white would be playing e3 and later on move with the knight. And this b6 bishop is kind of tricky because after especially e3, defending the d4 pawn, the b6 bishop can be a piece which is absolutely out of the play for the rest of the game, or at least for the moment. So e takes d4 is kind of a very serious decision to be making with black. If black would be playing e4, which is also tempting to play, then knight d2 would be the logical reply. Also, possibly knight e1 is possible, but let's say knight d2, and bishop d5 would not be possible to defend the pawn immediately. c4 would be extremely strong. After that, the e4 pawn would be under attack. So f5, and then for the moment, c4 is not possible. And then there are more questions. What do you think about
you lost
the
me
situation now?
The first two moves. No, I'm very impressive. I thought that was. I'm very impressed with the speed of thought. I'm just looking at the pattern.
Sorry, if I made confusion.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm not ready for this. I'm definitely just learning how to drive in your Formula One. I'm just thinking of learning how to drive, actually, as opposed to learning how to drive. But I always like the bishop in g2, that sort of development. I remember that was my favorite move. I love owning a diagonal. Apart from that, that's it. Okay. But I'm very impressed, and I'm sure if you would put it in slow motion and give me 20 minutes, I might understand what you were saying.
Well, actually, Fabiano has 20 minutes down.
I was going to point that out. He has been thinking already on this move. He has used already 14 minutes, and he was behind the clock already earlier. So he's about to be he's approaching a half an hour disadvantage in time, while Magnus Carlsen is only collecting. They start with an hour and 40 minutes, and you can see that he's up to an hour and 44 minutes, so he's getting the increments and not using a single second on thinking.
It's interesting for an Italian, isn't it? That he can actually control his passion in that way and just delay. It's just amazing the discipline they have to be able to know that at some point they will have to release all the thoughts all at once, like you did. It's very. It really is amazing. It's through training. I presume this is what it does. What I do has a process like chess has. Sort of you make your moves, and the project responds in exactly the same way, the two sides. So in a way, as a designer, or creative activities are very similar. There's a response always of what you want to achieve, and you're constantly amending it and changing it until there is an end game. And the end game is the process in which the thing gets built or gets realized. So I can see the similarity or why maybe I became a designer and I used to like chess. It is fascinating. I hope that is the fascination of those that don't play chess, is the one that gets then engaged and starts. So I keep on insisting on this idea. There should be more than the people in the audience that I in here that I assume they're all part of, have a passion and a dedication to chess.
Yeah, usually we have
actually trying to bring other people into it in a different way, in a way that is somehow uses tradition in a way that is totally renewed and refreshed for those that don't play it, not for those that play it.
And that's when chess notes comes in as well, and
Oh,
it might
absolutely.
be that music can bring more people into chess and understand the game better.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Daniel. Before you go, every guest of ours needs to predict the result. So you will need to tell us if you think that white will win, black will win, or it's a draw.
Okay, let me I need 2 seconds for this. You need
Your
to count
intuition.
my intuition, I like white.
White.
Yeah.
You're predicting a victory for Magnus Carlsen.
I'm predicting a victory for Magnus or a draw.
You can only choose one.
Everybody sits on the fence, I think, at some point they would say, I like white. That's an interesting look.
So it's a victory, according to Daniel, for Magnus Carlsen. Team
I'm
Magnus,
always wrong.
you must be happy. And remember that tomorrow at 1 p.m. here at the college, you can listen to Daniel's presentation about the chess designs. And also, I believe the visitors can try out chess notes in the same hall. Thank you so much once again for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we continue with the analysis of Game 9, we have an interview with Grandmaster David Howell.
Grandmaster David Howell, thank you very much for your time today. Game 8, it's a very exciting game. Sveshnikov, first of all, tell us, what did you make of the opening stages?
Yeah, so obviously it's what we want to see. It's what all the fans want to see. It's a bit of a, it's a very dynamic opening. Chances for both sides. Black takes many strategic risks, but then White has to be very active in order to keep the balance. So it's a great opening, and when I arrived already, I thought, okay, it's going to be a decisive game either way today, and it's exciting so far. It's been very exciting.
Right now, the clock is ticking down. The players are getting a bit short of time, but it looks like maybe Fabiano missed his best chance.
Yes, yeah, some of the spectators, we were discussing options for White, and White had many, many options. H3 felt like a very slow move, but before this, I felt he played amazingly. Fabiano, he was clearly well prepared. He was going for Magnus, he sacrificed the pawn without any fear. It looks like the worst is past. Maybe it's going to be some opposite colour bishop endgame. They might find a way to kind of simplify the position, but I don't know. I still like White. I still think White's slightly better. So.
What do you predict as a result today? Are we going to get our first decisive one?
I'm so bad with predictions. I think the next few moves will decide it. I think it's edging towards a draw. This is my problem. If White hadn't played h3, if White had stuck with knight c4, which was very natural, or queen h5, a bit more direct, I think we would have seen a decisive result in favour of White. Now I'm not so sure.
In case we see a decisive result today or in game 9, let's say 9 or 10, do you think the other player will have realistic chances of bouncing back, or what do you think?
Actually, the way the match has been going, I think if Magnus lost, I think that would be the end already. Like, he just doesn't look like he has any ideas with White. His body language has not been positive. Fabiano, if he lost, he'd give everything. He'd have nothing left to lose. He'd just he'd go straight for the throat in the next few games, and he could possibly come back. But I think if Magnus did, then if he went behind, then no chance. No.
Who do you predict will win this match?
Magnus. He's still got the edge. He'll find his form at some point sooner. Well, probably later now, but sooner rather than later.
Before the tiebreak or in the tiebreak?
In the tiebreak.
Thank you very much for your time and your answers.
No, pleasure. Thanks.